Okay, so with Simon's report, perhaps now if we can move to the next agenda item, which is the new Cancer Drugs Fund, and this has been here before. It's not new news, but we've had the consultation, and therefore I think the purpose of this is to review that consultation and then to agree the specific way forward in order we can give clarity to all stakeholders. So Bruce, I think you're providing the intro on this.
Thanks very much, Chair. If I can just start by putting a little bit of context. Improving cancer care is an absolute priority for NHS England. And the reason for that is that it touches the lives and families of so many citizens of this country. And globally and in the NHS, we've made a lot of progress over the last decade. But that is dependent on access to the newest treatments and the most effective treatments as quickly as possible. So improving the Cancer Drugs Fund is one of our commitments. We've discussed this at the board in 2015, and indeed since then we've had a National Audit Office report, a Public Accounts Committee report, and a Cancer Task Force led by Harpal Kumar, all of which suggested that we needed to improve the Cancer Drugs Fund. So in late 2014, I started discussions with the charities, the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries, the Department of Health, NICE, the MHRA, and others, so that we could start to think of a way forward for the Cancer Drugs Fund. We got to a point of formal consultation in November 2015, and that consultation closed on the 11th of this month. During that time, we had 286 responses, variably from the pharmaceutical industry, from patient groups and charities, from people working in the National Health Service, and from individuals. Now, of course, we need time to fully process some of those, but there were three main themes that seem to have emerged from the consultation. The first is that there's general support for a managed access process with clear entry and exit criteria into the Cancer Drugs Fund. The second is that there was a need for much greater clarity on the operational detail, and in particular for the mechanisms of financial control. And thirdly, people wanted to be reassured that we had clear details of transition to the new Cancer Drugs Fund. Interestingly, there were some, and not surprisingly, there were some contrasting views. People asked whether the new Cancer Drugs Fund would lead to more or less access to cancer drugs, and I'll come back to that. And there were also questions raised about whether cancer should have a special status over and above treatments for other conditions. So the paper which is in front of you describes our response to the consultation. And I think I'd like to perhaps start by drawing people's attention to the front page of the paper, where we quite clearly state that for patients, the new improved version of the Cancer Drugs Fund will help provide faster access to the most promising cancer treatments for our patients. Secondly, for taxpayers, the new Cancer Drugs Fund will drive stronger value for money in drugs expenditure. And finally, for drug companies who are willing to price their products appropriately, the Cancer Drugs Fund offers a new fast-track route to NHS funding for drugs at the point of market authorization. So the key elements of a managed access process are these, and I'll go through them at a relatively high level. Firstly, all new cancer drugs will be referred to NICE for assessment. This is a new development. Secondly, the assessment will not simply be yes or no, but there will be an option for a maybe when there is some level of uncertainty about the value proposition or effectiveness of a given drug. Those drugs or indications which are regarded as a maybe will become candidates for the new Cancer Drugs Fund, and entry into that will be approved by a joint NHS NICE investment group or committee. once a drug has spent time in the Cancer Drugs Fund and the uncertainty has been resolved, or enough data has been collected, NICE will perform a final appraisal and opine yes or no with respect to whether that drug should move into routine commissioning. The end result of this means that flow through the Cancer Drugs Fund, because there are clear entry and exit criteria, means that that flow will be greater and it will be more flexible than it is at the moment. But this does require NICE to work at a greater speed than it has done in the past. And to that end, it will produce draft guidance on drugs before marketing authorization, with the aim to produce final guidance less than 90 days or within 90 days of marketing authorization. Now, that will require additional resourcing, and we have received assurance from NICE that they will be able to develop the capacity and capability to meet those particular challenges. So the new Cancer Drugs Fund will go live on the 1st of July this year, not on the 1st of April. This will give us time to resolve a number of issues. Firstly, the practical aspects of NICE publishing initial recommendations prior to marketing authorization. Secondly, to enable us to address the risk of funding ineffective treatments during transition. Thirdly, how we can treat rare cancers and off-label drugs fairly. It is likely that those particular drug and indication combinations will be associated with greater uncertainty, so that is likely to give them much greater access into the Cancer Drugs Fund, which is different to the position that we find ourselves in at the moment, where they are often crowded out by more expensive drugs for commoner conditions. And finally, it'll give us time to resolve the issue of whether we simply keep drugs in the fund long enough to resolve the uncertainty, or whether we aim to keep drugs in the fund in a way that gives maximum access to maximum patients. And I would refer people to the third bullet point of paragraph 17 for that particular issue. So on the 1st of April this year, we will close the current Cancer Drugs Fund, but roll drugs over. So drugs that are in the current Cancer Drugs Fund will remain in it until they've been through a final appraisal process by NICE. We also need to sort out transitional funding arrangements. Those will be delegated, as you'll see towards the end of the paper, to the Chief Executive, the Chief Financial Officer, and myself. We are clear that we will anticipate seeing a reimbursement for these drugs at or below the rates which are in place in March 2016. We also need to ensure that we keep the new Cancer Drugs Fund within a fixed budget of 340 million. And the methodology for controlling that expenditure has been and may be described by the Chief Financial Officer. So it seems to me that the new operating model will remove some level of uncertainty which currently exists. It will ensure that we're able to balance the budget, and it will give patients clarity about the status of any given drug or drug combinations much sooner than the current Cancer Drugs Fund does. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Simon, anything you would want to add to this?
No, I think Bruce summarised it well. I mean, this is the substance of the discussion we had very extensively prior to going out to consultation, with some important adjustments made in the light of consultation. But let's get into the discussion first.
Okay, great. So, questions. Victor?
Will every patient getting drugs under the current fund continue to get drugs under the new regime?
Just to be clear, the answer is yes. Absolutely, Chair.
Good. Okay. John?
Bruce, I mean, we all knew when the Cancer Drug Fund was introduced, it was something of an emergency measure, an emergency treatment. So this is actually a really impressive adaptation and evolution of that into something that's much more adaptable to the needs of now. But you said at the beginning, one of the criticisms was it's got the word cancer on the front still, and it is only one class of disease, albeit one of our most pressing ones. Noel and I sit on the Accelerated Access Review, which is looking at the broader picture of how we get new innovative treatments into the health service. So can you just maybe connect those two together? How does the Accelerated Access Review connect to this process? Is this informing that process, or will that process inform the further evolution of the Cancer Drug Fund?
I think the Cancer Drugs Fund will inform the Accelerated Access Review. So in May last year, I wrote to George Freeman, indicating that we needed to link the two processes. And I think the issue that will influence that is the speed at which the Accelerated Access Review can come to its final conclusions. But it's quite clear that from their interim report that the two are pretty well aligned.
Noel?
May I just say in passing, Chairman, that this paper came through specialised commissioning yesterday, and of course Sir John, who's a rare cancer expert, Margaret Casely-Hayford, myself, put it under the expected challenge and test of an assurance process. So I wanted to make the point that this has already, in a sense, been battle tested as far as our assurance process is concerned. Bruce, could I ask you what? So the CDF, as it's currently constituted, worked for what I might call common conditions. How is it going to help with patients suffering from rarer cancer conditions?
The way I see it working is the New Cancer Drugs Fund is largely there to resolve issues of uncertainty related to effectiveness of different drugs. In the past, drugs for rare cancers haven't been appraised by NICE. They will be appraised by NICE as part of the new process. I think that will expose that in many cases there are degrees of uncertainty, which I think is likely to lead to much greater and easier access for those particular drugs into the Cancer Drugs Fund.
Thank you.
Moira?
Thank you, Chair. Bruce, this isn't simple. It's often talked about in very simplistic terms, though, in the media. So I'd like something simple, very simple. How is this better for patients than what we have now?
I think it'll provide faster access for patients, and I think that's really important. I think it will also bring clarity as to which drugs are the most effective drugs sooner than we know at the moment. So I think those are probably the two main things.
Thank you.
Noel? Sorry.
May I just add one other point that's quite important here. The current Cancer Drugs Fund is full. What we have with the new Cancer Drugs Fund is a system that is much more fluid, much more flexible. So we have clear entry and exit criteria. So we can bring new drugs in with greater ease, if you like, because we can get ineffective drugs out, or drugs where the uncertainty is resolved, or drugs which move into routine commissioning earlier in a way that we can't do quite as easily at the moment.
Bruce, you mentioned in your introduction the consultation process, and 286 responses received. And I was interested, as I was reading through the additional papers that you provided here, that of the overall number of respondents, something like 34% declared having received payment from drug companies, and a subcategory within that overall total being patients and voluntary groups. 81% declared they'd received drug company funding. Does that concern you in any way, particularly with reference to our sunlight disclosure programme?
I think there are two things about that. Firstly, you would expect a number of the respondents to have interests in the pharmaceutical industry. But the second thing is, and this is the most important point, is that people have declared it. And I think that's really important because that brings clarity to any potential conflicts of interest or views that people might express.
So maybe a couple of questions from me, if I may, Bruce. There was some suggestion that a number of drugs, quite a significant proportion of the drugs currently in the CDF, won't make it through the NICE evaluation or make it into routine commissioning. And I just wonder what we think about that and whether you would agree with some of the external reporting that's been done on this.
So we function in a tax-funded National Health Service. We have an obligation, I think, to get the best value for money for the taxpayers who are also our patients. And it's quite a, I was going to say it's a simple formula, but it isn't. The formula which is applied is how effective is a drug and how much does it cost. Now, the efficacy is pretty fixed. There is one component of that formula which is under the control of the pharmaceutical companies, and that is the cost of the drug. So by influencing the cost of the drug, you can influence the likelihood of that drug entering routine commissioning.
So we don't go into this with any sort of firm, fixed view on this. These are things that are still open for discussion at the appropriate time.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then the second thing is, within the consultation, as I sort of read it, one of the most significant areas of concern is about the capacity and timeliness within NICE to be able to do these reviews, which are intense, time-consuming, difficult, etc., etc. And I think it would be appropriate for us to understand what assurances, what perspective we may have on that, given it was one of the most important aspects of the consultation.
Well, the first thing I'd say is I think it's been a very legitimate concern that people have expressed, and that will have come from many different quarters, not least of all patients who have to wait. So there are two things. Firstly, NICE needs to do more work, needs to have greater capability and capacity, and that requires resourcing, which Paul may want to say something about. But the second thing is, and this is the important thing, is that we have received assurance from NICE that with the appropriate resourcing that they can put that capability and capacity in place.
And I understand their board is discussing this fairly soon,
Yes,
is that right?
I think it's the 17th of March.
Okay. Paul, you were nicely set up by your friend. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Set up as usual. I mean, the assurances from NICE are the important part of that. They have shared with us their very specific resourcing plans around this, which obviously are predicated on the forward pipeline that we can see and indeed the transitional pipeline that we've got. So I'm very comfortable that they have considered the correct volume of drugs as far as we can see that. They've worked out what the resources they need to live to the standards that have been set in this. So I see no reason for the board to doubt the assurances that we've been given.
And Bruce, therefore, from a sort of a clinical perspective, you're comfortable that this is the best solution for the way forward for patients in particular?
Yes, I do. I think this has been a comprehensive, complex process. Some of the discussions have inevitably been difficult, but I think there's a consensus view, certainly among clinical colleagues, that we've moved the dial and we've moved things forward.
And Paul, you're comfortable from a financial perspective as well that this is the best alternative we can come up with? Okay.
It is.
Okay. And you're comfortable, Noel, that from SpecCom yesterday you gave this a good working over and that the consultation's been sort of appropriately considered?
Yeah, from both the design and implementation perspective, I think we formed a pretty rigorous assurance process yesterday.
Any other final questions, comments? Simon, anything you'd add?
Just,
Or
no, I
comes to
think
this
it's been a
decision?
comprehensive decision, but just to underline, we chartered an independent cancer task force led by Sir Harpal Kumar, the Chief Executive, Cancer Research UK. Their clear recommendation to us was to do what we are proposing this afternoon. Secondly, we've had a National Audit Office review of the Cancer Drugs Fund Mark 1, and it clearly draws attention to the need to change the way the CDF works. And thirdly, that case was not only supported but accentuated by the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Commons, who produced a report to that effect as well. So I think a combination of our Cancer Task Force, the National Audit Office in respect to the good use of public resources, and Parliament through the PAC, this is going with the grain of what people see as a sensible evolution of the Cancer Drugs Fund.
Thank you. So now I think if there's no other questions or comments, we should just, therefore there are a series of recommendations that are made in and proposals on paragraph 31. I'm not going to go through and read them all in individual glory, but can I take it from our conversation that the board is happy to approve the recommendations as set out in the paper? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Bruce, I would like to say to Paul and indeed to John, who sat next to you, that this has been a considerable effort on all persons, and therefore please thank your teams on behalf of this board for their professionalism, their diligence, and their effort and commitment to what is a very important subject. So thank you. Good.